In this tutorial, I'm going to show you guys real quick about navigating the page setup menu and what different things mean. So right now I'm going to focus on this minion here, and there's no grid lines and there's no mat around him, so that means that I have my cutting mat off. So I want to turn my cutting mat on because I will need to cut him on a piece of paper, and I'm going to use my 12 by 12 mat. You can scroll down if you have different mat sizes that you want to use, but for this one I'm going to use my 12 by 12. You can adjust this reveal button here to show your guides, and I haven't traced him yet, so he's still just a picture from the internet. So let's move him out of the way so I can show you this stuff. So you can adjust it darker or lighter depending on how you want to see your mat. And then if you go up top here, you can turn your grid on, which will make a difference if you had your reveal turned down. And you can snap your image to a grid. You can show guides or turn off guides. You can add crosshairs to the mat so you can make sure you're getting things straight. And you can turn your ruler on and off up here. And then you can make your spacing square, or you can change it and make it isometric. But I don't ever mess with any of that stuff. I just keep it square. You can also change your grid sizing, like the squares in it. The default is 1 inch, but you can change it to whatever you want. And then you can change up the divisions. Kind of confusing because I don't really see anything happen with that. Interesting. Let's put it back at 1. And then right here will be your registration marks. If you are printing and cutting, you would use type 1 for the Cameo. And you can adjust this area here, which is your registration marks, where you want your sheet to cut. And you can see that this is off my mat, so it's not going to work. So I need to go back to my menu, and I need to change the size of my paper to the letter size, because that's what size my printer prints. Let's adjust this. And I don't really like to work with the grid on. I think it's just too much for my eyes, so I turn it off. And then if you go back to the print and cut settings, you can adjust the thickness of these lines, but just remember that the thinner the lines, the harder a time your machine is going to have reading them and cutting correctly. So I just leave it on the one that was already set. Now let's look at our advanced options. That looks fine. Okay, now looking at our mat, you can change the orientation of how you want your paper to go on your mat. So if you have it this way, then you would need your minion straight up and down, just like the mat, just like your paper on the mat. If you put your paper horizontally, then you would want to turn whatever you're print and cutting horizontally to fit on your mat, or vice versa. Like if you want 2 small minions, you would just make them smaller, and then you could put them both side by side. So I'll make them small so that they fit. Straighten this out a little bigger. And let's say I want 2. You can either right click and duplicate and move them over, or you can click on him, go down here to the duplicate menu, replicate is what it's called, and you can either duplicate it to the right, to the left, down, up. You can do multiple at a time, or you can fill a whole page. You can also make a replication that's mirrored of the image you have clicked, or rotated. So I just want one more, so I'll just move him over. And now I am ready to print him. So you don't have to worry. When you put your paper in the printer, your paper doesn't need to be like this going into the printer. Your paper will go in long ways like normal, and your minions will just print sideways instead of straight up and down on your paper, if that makes sense. But then when you put your paper on your mat, you need to put it horizontally if you're cutting like this. Now, this is just a picture from the internet, so I need to trace it so that after it prints, when I cut them out, it actually cuts. So I take the whole trace area, I select it all, and then I just want the outline because it's print and cut. If you do want the insides of your print and cut, then you would do a solid fill and you would select this trace option, but I just want the outline of him. So I'm going to adjust my threshold until I get clean lines on just the outside, and those look good to me, and I'm going to trace the outer edge. You can also trace and detach, and that would take him away from all that white space from the photo that I came from the internet. I'll show you an example. So I'll trace and detach, and now it's not in this anymore, and I can delete this and get rid of this white space. So I'll put them back now that they're by themselves. And that's kind of a way you can crop an image and get rid of background space. I'm going to have to retrace them to get my cut lines for them. So I'll go back to outline because I just care about the outline of them. And I will adjust this till it looks clean. That looks good. I'm going to trace the outer edge. And so when you print this, it's not going to print your red cut lines, so you don't have to worry about it. I would just leave everything the way it is. If you move these at all before you cut it and after you print it, then your cut lines will be messed up. So just leave it the way it is, print it, and cut it. The way you print is just go up to the top to File, and then Print. And then you can do however many copies you want to do. And just select Print. And then when you want to cut it, after it's printed, you would lay it on the mat just like how it looks on your Silhouette Studio. And you would send it. Now, other ways I think people have questions with the mat menu would be the orientation of the mat gets messed up, or you click something and it gets confused. This doesn't mean that your mat is going in this way or anything. It just changes the look of things because sometimes people are cutting long things. Like, I'll show you an example. I am making a sign for my son's birthday party because from the street you can't see our street name. So at the end of our street I'm going to put a big yellow sign and I'm going to put Minions this way. And so it's really hard for me to design this with my mat this way. And I'm also not using a mat because I'm cutting this with vinyl, and I'm just going to use vinyl on my cardboard box that I'm going to put out. But it's really hard for me to see what I'm doing and size things like this. So I will rotate my view of my cutting area so that I can see how big things are going to be, and so I can just map things out better. But when you do go to stick your material in, it will be like this. It will go in just like that, and it will be cutting sideways like this. I hope that kind of clears up some confusion about that. You can adjust it all different ways, just depending on how you want to work on your mat on the Design Studio. You can also, back to this print and cut area, turn on your print borders, and that would be this black line here. When you work with registration marks, it's not really going to make a difference because you have to stay inside this red box, which is smaller than the print area. But let's say you wanted to, you don't want to cut him out, you just want to print him, then you could, let's move one of them out of the way. Nope, I can't. Okay, we'll just use both. You can make them as big as you'd like, but you have to stay inside the print border. And this is good in case you're doing like invitations or something and you've typed everything up inside Silhouette Studio and you want to print them. the print border is smaller than what your cut border is. So make sure you turn on that print border so you don't go over it. Like, see right here, I'm going over it and it wouldn't print right. But that's about it. That's about the basics of page setup and what all these different things mean. I hope that was helpful.